How are you doing today, everybody? First off, I wanted to say thank you for clicking on my video. And two, we finally hit 100 subscribers, so thank you for the support. I appreciate all of you. But the topic of Riven rolling, very, very complex topic. But I'm going to give you a simpler way of figuring out how to roll a Riven that is not so pressure oriented on getting a god roll, and then we'll talk about how to get a god roll, or what a god roll is for each specific weapon. So we're going to take a look at this Sobek here. Completely unmodded. I have the Arcane, though. And the first thing we're going to do to be able to demonstrate what we need out of a Riven, which I do have, which is crit damage, multi-shot damage, is we are just going to throw all the multipliers on. Let's see, multi-shot, fire rate. Okay, let's do crit. So we have multi-shot, base damage, and status chance now for the galvanized mods. Crit damage, crit chance. Okay. We have fire rate. We have punch through. And just so we can fit everything. We have reload, and this mod does both. We also have reload on Merciless, but sometimes you want to go for one of the other ones, so you'll need to get it from the mods. Or choose not to. A shotgun unique issue of fall off. So to combat that, we put this on here. We do faction, cleanse. Okay, so we'll do this. And then we also have, what's the other one? Ammo. Our main core multipliers. Each one of these mods almost double, 50% to double our damage. But if you notice, there are no elemental mods on here. So say you want to do corrosive, if only you had 2 more mod slots, you would be able to slot it. And this is where a Riven comes in. We have to evaluate, based on play style and how we're going to be playing, what we value out of these. And let me show you what the basic setup is you don't worry about fall off. You want punch through, but a lot of times it's got to go. Reload comes from the Arcane, and ammo mutation gets slotted in the Exilus, and we slot our elemental mods in here. But the issue comes when you want, say, like Hunter Munitions. Well, Viral requires 2 mods, or say you're using a Panzer. You would put Corrosive on here and get Viral from the Panzer. This is where a Riven comes in. When you roll a Riven, you consider your original multipliers. Let's put them back on here. You consider your original multipliers. A lower dispo Riven, the quick and easy bro science way of doing this is the lower a Riven dispo is, the more attack speed is favored, the more faction damage is favored, the more punch through is favored, because the number is so much lower. Literally the number that these give you, like 1.2, is so much lower. As the dispo gets higher, through diminishing returns, going from 1 punch through to 2 punch through, you're only going up 50% damage. But having 1 punch through doubles your effective damage. So as the dispo gets higher, the higher end, the higher crit, the higher multi-shot starts to get favored. And faction damage, if you're dealing with a damage over time build, there's never really a bad time to have faction damage. So it's neutral. But even then, as powerful as faction damage is, there still is diminishing returns, but you never get to see it because what other faction mod could you put on here? So, personally, speaking of faction mods, if you roll a Riven and it's plus Grineer, plus Corpus, plus Infested, and like minus Zoom, that could be your general all-around use god roll. It just permanently takes the flex slot of whatever you're using. If it's like say for this, it's an impact weapon, but say I do a hunter munition build, impact doesn't matter as much anymore. But these are your main multipliers, and when you roll Rivens for primaries, I would recommend looking for a toxin element, and I have plenty of these. A toxin element. No, that's crit chant. I think this one's got electric. Okay, cold. But to make viral, because the weapon has innate toxin on it, I can slot this, and it will give me the projectile speed, and will allow me to move something else over here, or do more projectile speed, which will give me less fall off. Because shotguns are unique in that they have 2 types of reduced damage. Now talking about case specific with primaries, the Convectrix is a good example of this. My Convectrix is built solely to do slash. So when I rolled a crit chance, crit damage, faction damage to Grineer mod, I was effectively done. The only way this weapon or this Riven could do more damage is if I rolled the exact same Riven, but with a negative that's harmless, like minus zoom or something. So the general thing is to get your multipliers joined onto the Riven itself. So whatever mod or element you're trying to put on, that's why Toxin is such a good element to have on your Riven itself, because it allows you to mod for viral and corrosive. So instead of pulling from one of these multipliers, it adds one of the 2 mods that I would want to put on here, which would be my 2 element mods. Let's see, a punch through reload toxin mod, or a puncture reload toxin Riven would fit perfectly here. And when you're looking for a Riven, you want to make sure that it directly replaces one of your scaling mods. So what I find personally is fire rate gets replaced a lot. On melees, crit damage gets replaced a lot. Because it so easily replaces organ shatter. It then makes using gladiator might super convenient. So you would use you would replace Organ Shatter on your build, and then you would use Gladiator Might for your second crit damage on a slash build. Or if you're doing like a corrosive build, amping your element damage higher could also be a positive. But anything that increases the decreases the weakness of the weapon. So like fall off, the Sobek's got it pretty bad, 26 meters. When this gets stacked, it doesn't show the increase, but it turns it into kind of a sniper. So let's see. One of the popular slash weapons is the dual ethers because of the Riven dispo. You want to roll for a weapon like this, and you'll see I got rid of Organ Shatter, like I was talking about, because the crit damage is on this is higher, and through diminishing returns, you just take Organ Shatter off, and you get the bonus range, bonus crit chance. So for something like this, you're going to have your main multipliers of your crit damage, your crit damage, your reach, your attack speed, probably Weeping Wounds if you're doing a dot build, which this is, crit chance, your faction damage, and crit damage, which I've doubled up on generally. So for melee Rivens, you're going to look to enhance what your build is. Range is really good, almost always. Crit damage is pretty good. Not as strong as it used to be, but it's always a positive. Attack speed, especially if you're running Berserker Fury, is always good. So an ideal Riven would be range, attack speed, maybe crit damage. If it's a status weapon, you would look toward like an element. And if it's a high enough dispo, it could even be status chance. One of the tricks that I use to roll Rivens, or it's not really a trick, but it's just to make it more convenient, is I will load up when I go in, and then I will leave, and then go back in so the numbers reset, and then I will go to the build that I want to modify that has the Riven on it. And I will actually screenshot this. And because I have multiple monitors, I will then drag this. Sorry, hold on. I will screenshot the mod config that I have on here and the build values itself. So when I see the new Riven, I can look and compare directly to what I'm getting compared to what I have. So say I lose on the new, like I roll the dual ether Riven and I get no crit chance on it. I can then look and go, oh, I have Blood Rush. It would knock me down to 20% crit, which Blood Rush is always going to scale off of, but then I would lose 35. Okay, I need to figure out what Blood Rush at 12 stacks gives me, and then add 35 to it to see what my final crit chance value is. And if it's too much of a loss, I will either go to the next Riven and not accept the one that rolled, or I will figure out what other bonus I'm getting. And this makes it significantly easier to compare. So, word to the wise, it's just sort of a general rule of thumb, and it makes rolling significantly easier. Okay, let's talk about status weapons. What am I doing? Okay, a general all use. It's a garbage roll technically, but it pays dividends. Hold on, I actually have two of these. Okay. My Jat Kusar Riven is crit chance, crit damage, status chance. I was doing a basic general build with this, and this Riven allows me to be permanently in reds. And it bumps my status chance up high enough as because of how low the status chance is on the Jat Kusar. Let's see what it is. It's 19%. So it would, with Weeping stacked up, the magic number for Weeping to apply a status effect every time is 18. So at 12x, if you have a base status of 18, Weeping Wounds every time you hit an enemy will proc a status effect. That's the golden number. This allows me to get basically a 1 in 5 chance of proccing 2. So it turns, instead of having a guaranteed chance of proccing 1, if I'm dealing some multi-hit part of my combo, I'm probably going to end up with an extra status at some point, and it allows me to build my condition overload stacks faster. So for stuff like this, you need to feel it out. Obviously, when you're dealing with true god rolls, you would be looking at... okay. Hold on. I have one for the Fang. An example. Okay, my Riven pulled this status proc from 124 and turned this into a puncture weapon. It was originally as a puncture weapon. 26% crit chance, 2.6 crit multiplier, 26% status chance. Not bad stats, but it's not a slash weapon. This Riven, it's negative, gives me the equivalent of a primed reach worth of range. So 4.7 with this, 4.8 with the Riven. So I now have an option of either running both, and I do, or taking this off and gaining the use of another mod slot on a very mod slot starved weapon, which melee always is. So this is another potential role that could help considerably, is if you're having issues balancing what element you need the weapon to do, or once the dispo gets high enough, if the dispo keeps climbing on this, it will reduce puncture below slash, and then slash will start proccing more. But it's almost dead even. 26.7 for impact slash, 28 for puncture. So it's almost enough, but it's a solid roll. Then you also have, let's see, an IPS delete. I think my Corinth Riven does it. Okay. Yeah, the Corinth Riven almost does it. But it's for slash, though. But it allows me to proc viral more. Now, obviously, it would have been better if it was one of the other statuses. But it reduces one of the statuses to the point where it's almost 0. Oh, I've got a better example of this. Hold on. Surprised I didn't think of this. The Spectra Vandal. The puncture roll is more than 100% negative puncture. So it actually removes an element off of this. So if you see it's... Okay, hold on. I'll just remove this one. Back out so we can see the innate stats. Okay, so it is a puncture slash weapon. And when I slot this, it increases the slash. Sorry, it increases the slash through the damage. It has faction damage to Grineer, but it also adds the element electricity, which allows me to easily mod for radiation. So this is a Demolist killing weapon, especially with 130% faction damage. Makes it great. So this Riven would probably be one of my better Rivens because it helps so much on a very specific status, and it basically turns this into a slash only weapon. So God rolls, this would be a lower G God roll. It wouldn't be a capital G. Like a capital G God roll would be like crit chance, crit damage, faction damage, or even multi-shot with specifically a minus puncture. And generally the negative is what, for those of you that are looking to like sell Rivens, generally it's the negative that jacks the price up super high. So considering a couple of you might be thinking about getting like a Vectis Riven, which as of July 25th, you should be using the Nell to kill Eidolons right now. But if you're doing a Vectis, a crit chance, crit damage, multi-shot, minus magazine is the perfect roll. That being said, a crit chance, crit damage, minus magazine Vectis Riven is worth a whole lot more than a crit chance, crit damage Vectis Riven. Or even a multi-shot crit damage Riven. So it's the negative a lot of times. And with that, it's basically figuring out exactly what the weapon would do better as and turn it into something more favorable. So say I had the Pulmonars up. Okay. I would look at the weapon. I would see that it deals mostly impact. It has a little bit of viral. About a 2-to-1 ratio, which means impact is going to proc twice as often as viral. What I would be looking for out of this the Riven for it would either be enough crit chance to push the weapon into oranges and a toxin roll and attack speed would be a good specific Riven for this, and also probably a negative impact roll would be a damn good roll for the Pulmonars, because it would weight the viral more, and when I would eventually mod for toxin would be way heavily weighted. And with the dispo of this, I actually don't think you could get to minus 100%. It's getting pretty close, though. If it might just be able to barely hit a minus 100 impact roll. Would weight what I want on the weapon significantly higher that I could actually take advantage of it. And this would be like the perfect Corpus killer. So like faction damage to Corpus also. So like an attack speed, range, minus impact, Corpus Riven would be fantastic for this weapon. So identifying what you want on a melee Riven is significantly more complicated than a primary or a secondary. But a lot of times all you have to do is just look at the weapon to see what negative you need. Like, what element would you not want on the weapon that would make it way better? And for this, a minus impact, where I could then heavily mod for the weapon that I want. Because if you have a pure toxin weapon with a little bit of viral, that's exactly what you need against the Corpus. And that would turn this into a god tier weapon So that would be the roll that you would need. A couple other ones. You could roll like a. You could look for like, I think the Dex. I put that build on. The Dex Furus. Look at the. All right. So if we look at the weapon, it's got 14% crit chance. And with 200% crit chance, it only gets us to 40%. It has a very high dispo. So I know by looking at it that unless I roll a crit chance that saves me this mod slot on the Riven, it's not worth me rolling crit chance on it. Obviously, it brings it up a little more, but unless I roll crit chance that's really, really high, that either gets me over 100 and I gain something for it, it's more effective for me, even if, unless you roll multi-shot crit chance crit damage. That is a fantastic roll, because it's all multipliers on outgoing damage. That I shouldn't roll crit chance on this weapon, because the base stats just aren't high enough. That being said, it's almost always on a primary worth it to roll a crit damage. But the Riven that I ended up working with was a damage electricity puncture Riven. And the reason being is I'm using this as a bullet hose weapon against Grineer. So puncture damage makes you do more damage against Grineer. Obviously, flat damage gives you more damage against everything. Electricity makes my corrosive proc significantly stronger. And I can just burn down through alpha damage. Because this is an older weapon. I would literally, and I do, even in Steel Path, I can just burn down a Grineer unit. Now, it'd fall off more if I didn't want corrosive. Like potentially, like say I wanted to do infested, I could probably get away with a gas electric build with this. But then I wouldn't want the puncture. So it wouldn't be a capital G roll. And obviously the minus damage to infested would hurt like hell, especially when using dots. So this Riven would be horrible against the infested. But who's really worried about infested damage? So a lot of times the really big expensive Rivens are a Riven that takes advantage of the weapon's best stats, and the negative gets rid of the weapon's biggest weakness, the thing that's inhibiting. Ooh, let me give you a good example. I think of the Pandera Riven. Okay. I think it's this one. Okay. This is a really good roll for a very specific reason. It's not a god roll, but talking about when rolling crit chance, you have to roll high enough to get something for it. The crit chance on this Riven, okay, with Prime Pistol Gamut, I have 86% crit chance. I am never seeing an orange in my life. But I have enough crit chance on this Riven that I am now seeing oranges 22% of the time. So I got something, and I got a good chunk of the next tier of damage because of the crit chance on this weapon. The other bonus to this is it has a strong slash on it and a weaker cold. But more specifically, because of the dispo, because of how much weaker the cold is, I am then able to mod for slash to be more heavily weighted. Obviously, it would be a little better if slash was weighted a little bit more, or viral, because you want to see 2-to-1 ratio ideally. That's number crunching, boilerplate perfection stuff. But either way, this weapon is heavily weighted slash, and its next highest stat is viral, which is exactly what I want on here. And because of this, it allows me to get, through modding, slash to the appropriate weighting. So this Riven is a specifically good roll specific to this weapon, because where normally it would be 26, 26, 52, so it's slightly slash weighted. 50% of the time, it would proc slash when a status chance does proc. So 12% of my shots would proc slash with this weapon. But because of this and the other Karnas mod, all of a sudden, I am proccing slash and viral way more. So this is a good roll specifically to this weapon. Obviously, a negative, like a minus zoom, would help. I think minus zoom would actually be a specifically really good negative, because on the alt fire, I'm pretty sure this weapon forces you out of zoom. So you can't even ADS with the alt fire, which is the gimmick for the prime. Yeah, the zoom minus zoom specifically would be a completely harmless negative for this weapon if you use the alt fire, because yeah, it forces you out of ADS. So that's a specific thing for this weapon, though, right? And it gets, the perfect Riven roll gets a little more complicated with the primes, because a lot of them have gimmicks, a lot of them have Banshee signature shotgun instrument. What is it? This one? Okay, I don't think I have a Riven for this. Okay, but say for this weapon, for example, the Magnus. It has one of the most insane crit chance mods I've seen in a long time. And this was me just messing around with, like, corrosive damage. But because of this specific mod, a heavy crit damage roll on a Riven would go miles on here, because this is 400% flat crit chance. So crit damage would get a ton of multipliers on it. But this is a unique mod to this weapon, for Magnus only. So for this weapon specifically, you would also look for multi-shot. You would look for something like, say, if you were running corrosive, you could look for toxin. Even like a reload speed would be like a second tier stat. Reload speed isn't bad. Though with the secondary arcane, I'm willing to bet this drops down below 1. It wouldn't be the end. But see, you could also do crit chance also. Knock you into the next tier. Because every time, the first tier is the big one, where it gives you the 6x multiplier, or 5.9 for this one. But every time after that is effectively a 40% damage increase. So it would help going up a tier. And you don't really care too much with this weapon, because you're just rolling around on the ground, headshotting stuff. I mean, you're doing hella damage, but you're basically just rolling around on the ground. Unironically good for killing liches. Okay, bullet hose. You would look for something to replace lethal torrent. So a fire rate multi-shot Riven. Because of the dispo, if the dispo was high, you would look for something to replace this, plus another free stat off of what your multipliers are. You could also do like a puncture in there, because generally you don't, or not puncture, punch through. Generally you don't get punch through. And on bullet hose weapons, they value that a ton. Reason being, when an enemy dies, you are firing so fast. Where normally, if you have a weapon that does like big damage with a high reload, with bullet hose weapons, an enemy will die, and in its death animation, you could put 20-30 rounds into them before their body disappears and falls down on the ground. The Soma is notorious for this. The Soma with punch through and the Soma without punch through are two completely different weapons. And the Velox is the same. This is almost a meme trying to bullet hose heat corrosive on it. I mean, it worked eventually, but when you're trying to bullet hose and burn through enemies that are running at you, punch through is the name of the game. And if you're hitting two enemies at once, it doubles your damage. It's another multiplier. So a fire rate multi-shot punch through mod or punch through Riven roll would be fantastic on a weapon like this. Even like a fire rate faction punch through mod would do awesome because there's multi-shot here, and because of the galvanized mods, multi-shot isn't valued as much anymore on Rivens because this is now a 3 multiplier. So you can easily hit 3 multi-shot. It's not valued as much. But stuff like that, you need to try to get more multipliers onto your weapon. When you're running, like, say, corrosive heat, the more you can replace of these, like you can see how I have 2 unranked corrosives and a rank 2 scorch. It's because I was trying to get slash and heat to proc at the same time and to just bullet hose 10 stacks of corrosive. So it depends on the weapon. If it's a crit weapon, when getting crit chance on your Riven, if it's already a crit weapon and say like Target Cracker, Pistol Gambit is putting in work on it, make sure you're actually getting the next tier. Let me see, what other weapon do I got where I actually doubled down on it? Oh, the Checker, this one, heavy crit weapon. 207% crit chance because the Riven got bumped it up so much. So it has 50 base crit chance. And I went with this because the crit chance, including critical delay, bumps me slightly into reds. So 7% of the time before Vigilante, I will naturally hit a red. And the damage is insane. It's an internal bleeding build. So when you're rolling crit almost doesn't matter if it doesn't get you to the next tier. That's the big money maker, is when it gets you over the tier, over your yellows into your oranges, or over your oranges into the reds isn't as much of a big deal. But that first one is going from yellows to oranges if you're going to roll crit chance on a weapon. And obviously for this base damage, big bonus. Let's see, we did crit chance, alpha damage, status. Oh, let's talk about drawbacks. Okay, the worst one I have, hold on, it's a melee. Riven Dispo. It's a wonderful thing, but it can bite you in the ass. For those that have Cronin Rivens, the Cronin Riven Dispo is actually going up, and it messed up my IPS. The Cronin is a slash weapon, but due to the Riven, because I had heat, crit damage, and cold on it, with minus damage to infested, as the dispo for this weapon climbs, the less valuable the Riven is because of the IPS weighting. Before it was perfect. Heavy slash weighting, Below it was viral, and right below that was heat. But the IPS went from like point 0.5, or the dispo went from 0.5, and it's like at 0.6 now. It's insane. Um, so the drawback is the better this Riven gets, the worse it gets, or the less valuable it is. Um, let's see what else. Uh, oh, trends. Um, Obviously, as a weapon gets released, its dispo, regardless of how good or bad the weapon actually is pegged at point 0.5. If you are somebody who buys Rivens, or has a weapon in mind where you're like, oh, I really, really enjoy this, and you know people aren't going to use it. Like, say, for example, oh, the war fans. The, Vera something. Veracruz. Brand new weapon. Garbage dispo. There is a chance I will pick up a Riven for this weapon later. The Quasis is also another good one. And on that one, you would actually want a slightly status roll. You would want like a really like a some sort of status roll on it to at least get you over the hump. Talking about making sure you get something for it, because it has I think 16% base status. So weeping doesn't get you all the way to 100% every time. So if you were to get even a slight status chance roll on your Riven, it would get you to 100%, which is the big one. The general trend in terms of like the ontological view, time based, is when, regardless of how good the weapon is, unless it is particularly good, Rivens will be expensive when they first come out, obviously because it's a new weapon. And if they're garbage, they plummet in price almost immediately. That's for the new people. If you didn't know that, literally, if the weapon isn't that good, you're not seeing holy bejesus videos on YouTube. Look at this damage. It will show how good the weapon is almost immediately. Just wait for like a month, and you can pick up a Riven for that weapon for like 30p. If the weapon's good, you're gonna have to give it like 6-7 months because people are gonna heavily roll it. The Brahma was bad for it. It took a long time for those prices to come down, and the Vectis is only just now starting to come out of the sky. Because there's finally so many alternatives for killing Eidolons now. Like, I think Nell Rivens have benefited the most from the current Eidolon meta. So don't sweat Rivens too much. But if you do play the game of rolling Rivens, which I have done myself, if I find something particularly juicy, I sold a melee crit chance, crit damage. I forget what the negative was. Glaive Riven at the height of everybody freaking out about those. And I made a chunk of change. But I kept the one that I liked. But just roll with it. Go with the trends. Don't try to force anything. You are not missing out. And to be honest, it's when the Rivens are the worst. Like, I would never use the Ether Daggers if it wasn't for the dispo on the Riven. And that's like how stat sticks work. Like Jaws stat sticks, Amphis stat sticks. Because nobody uses the weapon. Hell, what is it? Furax dispo dropped because so many people were using it with the Brahma and the Tsar. Nobody cares at all about that weapon. They want the AoE increase, but because the weapon got more popular, the Riven dispo dropped. That was silly. But just wait. Rivens is a gotcha system. It's pure RNG. There's very little chance. I have a couple of them I have a couple that are close to counting as like a capital G god roll. But even then, the most useful Rivens that I have are utility Rivens, where they're case specific, but inherently that makes things less flexible. But they are the Rivens that I end up using the most. I don't know what else to add about this, so I'm just going to cap it off here. 45-minute video. I hope this explained some to anybody who made it this far, but it's about the closest thing to a complete 101 I could give. Okay, I mean, let's go over the basics. I don't think I have any Rivens, but unveiling, they have like, yeah, I don't have any. I mean, I'm at 180 out of 180. You have a task. There are a bunch of YouTube videos on unveiling specific Rivens. There's a bunch of ways to cheese them. Figure out your way of how you do it, because regardless of how, unless it's something very specific, knowing how to unlock a Riven your way is going to be faster than first timing somebody else's way. And very, very rarely are you going to end up with something utterly fantastic. Like, I think, yeah, I just unrolled, or just unveiled another Nataruk Riven. I think that was my last one. So that's going to get sold off, or it's going to be given to a clan member. Because I don't need it. And Nataruk Rivens aren't going for what they used to. So, like, if I give it away, what am I missing? Like 150, 200p? Also talking about a Riven that needs something very specific. The Proboscis Cernos was also another one that needed a very specific Riven. Plus slash roll. So, figure out what you want. And also, word of warning, out of all the money that I've spent on this, thinking back over it, like, all the frames, all the fashion, I think the most expensive thing I have ever bought, period, was slots for crap. I think out of that entire thing, the most expensive thing I have is the 180 Riven slots. They give you 30 for hitting MR30. You start with, I think, 15, so 45 free. But the rest of it you gotta pay for, and it's 60p for essentially a row, or a column. And these slots combined with Warframe and weapons slots, I think, are literally the most expensive things I've put on this account. So keep in mind, if you get 15 Rivens, just roll them through. Transmute. When you do Eidolons, you'll get the Riven transmuters. Keep the ones you want, sell the ones you don't, if they're worth something. If they're not worth anything, roll them, combine them, transmute them. So I can't think of anything more. This is basically turned into a rant, but this is the most complete explanation of Rivens I think I could give in like a first time thing without going over a bunch of just more case by case scenarios to give examples of why you would do something specific. And it's literally just figuring out what the damage is, and balancing proc distribution and stuff like that. But, oh, the boar. Okay, that was another one. Crit damage, heat, minus impact. Turns the boar into a slash weapon. So the minus impact boosts the value of the Riven significantly. So it's an impact weapon. Knocks impact down. Hold on. Okay, 26% impact. If this eventually gets buffed enough, it probably won't. Yeah, I don't think this weapon could get buffed high enough. I mean, technically it could be minus 100, especially with the 2-1 roll. Turns this almost into a slash weapon. So the god roll for the boar would include a minus impact roll on it. So, and that's just looking at the weapon. Obviously, you have 100 munitions, but and the heat on here gives me enough heat that I can then, at my leisure, balance the viral proc, and I chose to just go full viral. But I hope this helps. Thank you for the 100 subscribers. This is about as much of an information dump as I could give you guys. I know Toad asked for it, and I see you in the comment section, my dude. I appreciate you. But I hope this helps as much as possible. Have a blessed day, and thank you all for being here.